Warning, this video is intended for adult collectors. It contains plastic collectibles, questionable opinions, and someone who owns way too many plastic robots. It's too late. Random review is about to begin.
I thought we'd do one last review before the end of the year is out, and it's a toy that I've been curious about ever since we first saw it because it is a curious creation in and of itself. We're going to be talking about Legacy Skullgrin, a toy I had the G1 version of, so I was really excited to actually get my hands on the brand new one and figure out exactly why they did what they did with it, because it is a very curious figure. Now, this review probably would have been out a lot sooner. Unfortunately, the one I got from Hasbro Pulse had a misfired pin in the torso, so the torso didn't close and it didn't transform. And when I asked them to send me a replacement, they said they didn't have it available anymore. As of this recording, it's still available on Hasbro Pulse. Customer service for you. Meanwhile, over at my friends with Entertainment Earth, I had a figure missing out of my last order from there, and they had a replacement on the way within 3 days. So if you wonder why I went with them to be an affiliate, that would be why. And that is why I'm happy to be able to offer the 10% discount if you use the link in the description below. And that does stack with their free shipping, meaning not only are you helping the channel, you're getting a good discount on the stuff you were going to buy anyway. Helps everybody out, I feel. So, that's my cheap plug for the day, and why Skullgrin took a little bit longer for me to get around to. But we are going to talk about him, and let's bring him in and get a good look at one of the more curious aspects about the toy, which is this interesting choice of an alt mode. He's a hover tank, or maybe he's a hover tank because he has treads. He's like a half-tread hover tank of Cybertronian origin. Now, he does the thing that I don't mind, which is the fact he has no cockpit or window whatsoever. If he's entirely a Cybertronian vehicle, especially as a Decepticon, I wouldn't expect him to have a place where it looks like a human could drive him. That part all makes sense. Nothing else really makes sense on the toy. There's no wheels built into the underside, so it does not roll in any way, shape, or form. It lands flat on these white spaces, so it's not going to screw up the paint that's on the treads or anything like that. But you can't even like fake roll it like you can most figures, which is a little bit weird, but it's not like I roll my toys around and pretend to play with them anymore. I don't. Don't look at me that way. I don't. I swear to God. We're talking about this toy. Talking about this toy. Let's get into your hang-ups here. So, okay, fine. Hover tank. Looks like something I'd be shooting at in Halo. All right. So fine. Yeah, it's cast in a nice gray plastic. There's this like slight, this purple. I'm not sure what to call the purple. There's a slight bit of red to it. So let's go with a wine red coloring. Let's call it that. How about, or yes, magenta. I'm sure someone cried magenta. You're going to find a little bit of white plastic peeking through as well. The swords that are mounted on the side are soft plastic. Not entirely sure why. Well, actually, yes, I'm entirely sure why. We'll get to that in the robot mode. But for now, yeah, it's a curious thing. It's just kind of a block. I mean, obvious legs, obvious chest, obvious arms. They don't really blend into a solid vehicle. You still see the gaps in between the two parts. Now, this is not something that is like terribly upsetting, because there's another thing that I'm kind of like an advocate for, is why does a Decepticon who's just a war vehicle, especially on Cybertron, need to hide as something that looks sensible on Earth? The vehicle mode is there to offer an additional form of offense or defense, or it is there for maneuvering. So you don't really need to like hide yourself that much, but it is nice when it does. It's nice when it looks clean. It looks like a solid vehicle. Instead, it just kind of, once you know what the robot mode looks like, it just kind of looks like the robot mode kind of bunched up. There isn't anything really telling you it's a vehicle outside of having two sets of treads that don't even take up the entire length of the tank. Let me get these blades off, and then we'll go into another issue on the vehicle mode. Once the blades are off, you got the big gap going through the center, nothing really hiding the hips or these extension pieces, big gap over here. which is a little bit frustrating. Considering this toy's design and engineering style is so simple, I really wanted them to have a little bit more going for the vehicle than this, and ultimately it's just kind of a letdown. The only thing informing me of anything that it is the fact that there's treads on the sides, and yes, the turret on top, which the guns do independently go up and down because it's all 5mm peg, and then it does rotate all 5mm peg. So while you can do it, you might wear the peg down doing it too much, and then things might fall apart. I'd try to move it and pose it to a minimum degree if I were you. So yeah, the vehicle mode has issues, and yes, it's not very creative. It's utilitarian, which makes sense in character, but it is not making for an inspiring or interesting toy, unfortunately. Honestly, like, if these had a side peg and they could peg, like, right here, look at that. The shape of it could almost cover up all those gaps, you know, and you could actually incorporate this in. And I feel like that should have been the design focus, you know, because it doesn't look like something that would be too hard to do even last minute. Unfortunately, that's not how it goes. So, yeah. If you do want to at least upgrade, you got plenty of 5mm ports. Look, you got all these under here. You got 4 on the rear underside, 2 on the underside of the front, and there is clearance to add things there. 2 on the side, 2 on the side of each gun, and then these are also 5mm ports for blast effects or extended guns, what have you. So yeah, you got a lot of little playability. You got another one there if you figure out how to use it, and another one up there if you can figure out how to use that. So at the very least, there's a lot of ways of expanding this brick of a tank. So speaking of expanding, let's expand his parts and get him into robot mode and see if that is worth all the hassle. So we're going to start by unclicking all of this tread and extendo section that's on the underside. All right, and then I'm going to open up the legs a little bit. The legs are double hinged, so you can go ahead and fold those out. Make sure that the hinge is completely folded up on the inside before you push them forward into the front of the legs. And that's going to form up like so. All right, let's rotate all of this down. From here, we're going to separate out the legs and start bringing all this together. Foot down to get that out of the way. Rotate and fold up like so. Close it all up. Make sure all of these tab in correctly. We'll do the same on the other side. Just all accordion together, just like so. Up here at the top, we're going to open up the arms like that. Go ahead and flip out the hands now, just so we don't have to think about them later. Oh, come on. Come on. There we go. And then these are going to slide down on that. It's a very rare slide pin. Very rare these days. From here, 90-degree bend to get the waist into place, and then 90 degrees on the hips to get them all straightened out. And now here's the only real trick to the transformation. So we open up the chest, then flip all of this forward, and that is how that big skull head hides. It seems like most of the engineering was trying to figure out how to get that head to hide inside of a vehicle mode. And yeah, at least they succeeded in that. You know, it doesn't really get in the way, and it's pretty well hidden. I'm gonna go ahead and open up his horns and bring them all out where they're supposed to go. Raise it up, close up the chest. Just like that, you've got a Skullgrin in his robot mode. So, transformation-wise, he's not the most complex beast in the world. Like, he does, you know, just pretty much just pretty standard transformation elements. The impressive part is the fact that that giant cow's demon skull thing actually does fold up and fit inside of him neatly without really getting in the way or interfering. Doesn't scrape on the ground. That part of it's actually pretty well done. Everything else is kind of your basic run-of-the-mill transformation steps. Oh, and before I forget, if you go back here and fold this piece down, he has a little tail. He has a little demon tail. I think that's the part in Doom that you shoot to do most of the damage. So, once we have him in robot mode, a lot more of that white has been exposed, and now we're starting to see the design intention behind it. Now, the vehicle mode really didn't look anything like the G1 vehicle mode. The blast, the cannons were in the right place, and he did have technically, tank treads in the right spots, but aesthetically, It is an entirely different vehicle. You went from sharp, angular to very boxy, blocky. And then we get to robot mode where we're trying to kind of split the difference between the inner robot and the outer robot. What you have ultimately looks like a beefy, like went to the gym for 10 years kind of look to the robot mode from the original toy, but also wearing parts of the outer shell. More specifically, all those bone section armor pieces. So the aesthetic is an interesting one. It's somewhat of a clashing one as you put in these organic bone elements on top of a standard robot, but that does make it unique. Definitely stands out, definitely gives them more personality. Speaking of personality, let's take a look at our new Cyber Demon. It's a pretty wicked shape. I actually really do like it. It is bright white, as you can tell, and it's all soft plastic. The entire skull is soft plastic. That is why the swords are soft plastic, because they're on the same mold. So you have that to blame. Nevertheless, it's still a really nice sculpting job. It definitely does capture the character if your memory of the character is that outer shell. So everything else, I'll just keep them zoomed in. I'll keep them zoomed in here so we can take a closer look at some of these details. So you have things like that exposed horn with a bone sculpting to it. You have the belt, which it's an interesting design. We have a championship skull belt on our Skullgrin. That's kind of the impression I get. Or like the guy who walks around with the Punisher belt buckle. That's kind of a vibe I'm going for here. But yeah, you get little spikes and everything elsewhere. But for the most part, yeah, it's a weird blend. It's a really weird blend. I'm not entirely sure if this is the direction I'd like for Pretenders to go. But apparently, it's too much. It's too expensive to produce a shell and the robot. Even if they bring it up to like a leader class price point. Because we're basically still getting a pretty limited figure in the shell. And then not much functionality with it with the robot. There's ways to do it. I need to make a whole video on how I would do it. But for now, this is their solution. And I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. I'm not sure how many this would apply to well. So let's go into, like, I guess we can go into articulation. We can go into detail a little bit more. He is super clean. I'll give him that. The engineering being simple does allow him to just be like a straight up clean robot without really anything hanging out. Everything on mine feels nice and solid. Joint tolerances are really good. If you want to expand his arsenal, the 2 ports on the back, you get the 2, obviously his hands, but below the elbow, there's still ports. Ports now appear on the shoulders. So, yeah, plenty of ways to augment him, armor him up, or artillery him up, whichever you want. For the articulation, however, we can go and see that, yes, he has this really great range of motion in his head. That ball joint does a ton of work getting this guy to go up. You can have him like straight Superman flying. That's actually pretty rare as far as an articulation goes. Universal shoulder joints work pretty well, though mine's getting stuck on this side. Yeah, okay, so a little bit limited. There's a bit of a butterfly aspect that I don't think is intentional. But yeah, that's okay shoulders. I've definitely seen better. Let's see, biceps work, 360 degrees. Beyond the 90 for the elbow. Waist, 360 degrees. Universal at the thigh, though the armor, the skirt, does limit that. So that's unfortunate. 360 at the thigh, 90 degree knee bend, and then ankle tilt as well. He's not going to be doing crazy Power Ranger poses, let's put it that way. So you do have a little bit of limitation with the way you can pose him, but for the most part, it's not bad. It's not bad. I've definitely seen worse, but the limiting on the hips and the shoulders, I know is going to be annoying for some people out there, so good to mention it. Beyond that, the cannons do remove, so if you want to place his cannons differently, if we want to like arm mount him like he wants to be Starscream, we can do that and change up his look that way. Give him a little bit more of a unique presence. This piece is also on a 5mm, so we can switch it around. You can rearrange it however you want or use that for weapon combinations. You can start mounting these on the back. So if you kind of want him to have like a samurai like fan look, that is doable as well. So admittedly, there is a lot of customization that is capable with this figure. The guns themselves actually do have that dual purpose thing where I can put one in and it's a rifle, or I can mount it the other way and get a sword out of it. So he can be heavily armed with cannons. You can go in melee. Yeah. Weapon-wise, he comes with a lot and has a lot of versatility. So that, I think, is the biggest strength of the toy. And that is going to be my overall review of him. The articulation's a little bit limited in the robot mode, but it is a very characterful robot mode. The aesthetic is going to put some people off, disappoint others. Me, I do think there is maybe a better way you could probably blend the two, or me personally, I'd rather you just ditch the inner robot and focus on just making the outer shell the character. I think most people acknowledge the shell a lot more than the robot inside it. Or hey, Hasbro, make 2 different toys out of each. You know, I think that might get both audiences twice. You love doing that, right? Beyond that, he's just a goofy little figure. It's unfortunate. I really wish there was more to the vehicle mode, but it is really just a brick that is barely passing as a tank. And the engineering for the transformation, it gets the job done, and it's efficient, but it's not the most challenging or thrilling of transformations. Not a whole lot of trickery to it. So, does a lot of things on the average, but in the personality department and in the accessory department, nails it. So I'll leave that to you to decide if that is the tipping point to purchasing the toy or not. For me, I think it's at least interesting enough to enjoy as it is. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.